This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, welcoming you to another informative episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 336. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to visit with Alex Comstock. Alex is from the Dakotas, and he loves to hunt whitetails with his bow, but he even loves more writing about those experiences. He's going to share tips and techniques of how to get into the outdoor career as a writer. He's also going to talk about the challenges of shed hunting. He's got 3 specific things that you're going to want to hear about. It's never too early to think about food plots. Whitetail Rendezvous has an ebook for you. Just simply text 33444 food plot to get your copy. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We got a special guest, and I know they're all special, but Alex Comstock is the founder of Whitetail DNA. It's a blog. He's a noted author and one heck of a whitetail hunter. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Bruce.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm excited because when I was prepping, I found an article on your blog, 3 things to ask yourself before you start shed hunting. So let's talk about those 3 things right off the bat, because everybody's thinking of shed hunting. I live in Colorado. Guys are picking up mule deer sheds and elk sheds where they can, because in the high country, some of the higher elevations, we got a bunch of snow, and things aren't looking real good for the critters. But where they can get to them, south-facing slopes and stuff, they're picking up sheds. So let's talk about shed hunting.
All right, sure. What do you want to talk about for sheds?
3 things to ask you before you start shed hunting.
3 things to ask you. Well, when I wrote that article, I was kind of thinking about myself as a shed hunter, and, I've never been the best shed hunter in the world, but I like doing it. But I feel like there's a lot of people like me who, they love going out and get the shed hunting, they get super excited beforehand, but, sometimes it doesn't go kind of as you expect. I know guys that find tons of sheds every year, but then there are guys like me who don't find a lot. So when I went through that article, first thing was, are you willing to put on the miles? Because, I'll walk the most I walked in a day last year was, 15 miles, and there was 4 of us. And I think we found like 7 sheds that day. So
that wasn't real productive.
Definitely not. But it's fun being out there. So that's why I put that as the first thing, because I think some people, especially newer shed hunters, think that you might just walk out for, a couple hours and, the sheds laying everywhere. That's not typically the case.
That's interesting you say that, because, and you talk about, and I want you to follow up on this statement, you have paradise and normal. And folks, whatever the carrying capacity of your land is and your buck to doe ratio, that's all you're going to find in sheds. And sometimes you won't, because they're not wintering on your property for a lot of reasons. And so think about that and set your expectations at that level, not as Alex says, paradise and normal. So unpack paradise and normal for me.
Yeah, well, when I think of paradise, I think of, the highly groomed properties that people manage, that, they own a bunch of land, whether it be it's theirs or they lease it, and they've got standing crops, standing beans, late season food plots. Those properties, the guys that own those, they're going to find quite a few sheds. It's just when the deer are going to winter on your property, it's a lot, which is like for me, I hunt a lot of public land, I hunt by permission, and most of the land that I hunt, some of it deer will winter a little bit, but a large majority where I'm shed hunting is not where I'm actually hunting. I got to go out and find where deer are wintering. And even when you find that, being on public or by permission, I'm knocking on door after door after door and trying to, find a few sheds. So that's what I kind of mean, the difference between paradise and then normal.
Let's go on to the second thing to ask yourself. Are you willing to put on the miles? And you just said you went 50 miles and found 7 sheds. What type of commitment does it really take, to get a number of sheds and get an idea of what's on your property?
For me, like when I'm going out and you put in the 15 miles and you find a few sheds, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be deer there in the, during the fall, because like we just said, deer aren't always wintering where you're hunting. So that kind of leads into my second thing that I wrote about is, are you going shed hunting or scouting? Because there's a difference, especially for me, between going, I'll go shed hunting, and especially if I'm in an area where I will hunt in the fall, if I notice a rub or a scrape, it's really hard for me to concentrate on shed hunting, and it turns into a scouting mission, and then I'm not really shed hunting because, I'll have 3, 4, 5 hours go by, and I'll realize that I haven't been looking for sheds. I've been scouting. So there's got to be for me, I have days set where it's you're either going to go shed hunting or you're going to go scouting, and where I will go will depend on which one I'm doing.
And thanks for that. And now the third thing, how easily will you get discouraged?
Yeah, for getting discouraged, I mean, especially for people that haven't shed hunted as much, or if you're newer at it, when you go out and you walk, I mean, it took me, last year, I think within the first 4 or 5 weekends I went shed hunting, I picked up like 2 or 3 myself, which is, with the number of miles, it's not a lot. So you go out a couple of times and you don't find any antlers. It can be tough to just kind of give up or, turn into just start scouting. But, if you can ask yourself beforehand how these really get discouraged, and then realize that you might not find a bunch of sheds right away, or you might not find a lot at all, but you got to keep after it and keep after it and keep plugging away. And then eventually you'll start finding some. And then the more you find, the better you'll get at seeing them. And I've already found that with myself. I mean, I'm only 22. I've been really shed hunting for 3 or 4 years. And every year I'm getting better and better just picking them up and just noticing them.
Thanks for that. So let's talk about your blog now, and where I found this article. Why did you start that?
It's kind of a funny story how I got into it, because when I was, I think, 18 or 19, I shot a nice buck, and one of my buddies knew a guy who was an outdoor writer who wrote for a lot of magazines, and he said, hey, talked to one of my buddies, and he's like, hey, you should write an article on this kid Alex. He just shot a really nice buck. It'd be a great story. And then the guy pretty much told me, he's like, I'm not just going to write one for you. He's like, but you can write one, and then I'll help you, and then we'll try to get into a magazine. And so that's kind of where my writing career started. In high school, I was always a pretty good writer, and so I wrote an article, had this guy kind of mentor me and help me through it, and then I sent it to Kurt Wells, the editor of Bowhunter magazine. He loved it, and that got published. And then kind of a couple of years down the road, I was kind of thinking about what I want to do for a living, and that's, right now with me, I'm graduating college this upcoming spring, and I don't want to be stuck working a 9-to-5 job the rest of my life, and kind of wondering what if. And so I just kind of jumped into it and started this blog and started writing a bunch, and hopefully one day I can turn it into my full-time income.
It's interesting, folks. I talked to a lot of people, and I've had, most recently, Blake Alman was on my show, and he's written his own book, The Hunter's War, and he's 16 years old. I just think here we are with Alex at 22 years old, and the future looks bright for the outdoor industry, especially from the writing side, because we have men that are passionate about whitetails and passionate about the outdoors. So hats off to you. I'm excited to have you on the show and to share right now. You just shared a little bit of it, the career in the outdoors, but let's expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah, I think what stops a lot of people is that kind of that fear making that jump, because you don't have that security. That's already the big thing I'm thinking about. And I'm not even to that point yet where I'm, because I don't make $1 right now off of whitetail DNA. But, I just want to be able to do something that I love. And it's like, I was listening to a podcast the other day, where the Gritty Bowman podcast, where they're interviewing Donnie Vincent. And Donnie Vincent had talked about, would you rather make $150,000 doing some job that you hate and that you wake up every morning just dreading to go into work? Or would you rather make $70,000 doing something you love? Which guy's more richer? And that's kind of what I think. And if I can combine doing what I love for full-time income, it doesn't matter how much money you make. It's just about, I would be 10 times, 100 times more happy with my life.
And that's wisdom coming from a 22-year-old. And I don't know what your age, but I know there's some people out there right now that are going, man, I just, I have to go to work because I got to feed the family. I got bills. I've got all these responsibilities. But, I heard her put one, working at some place we don't want is a rut. And that's all rut is a coffin with both ends kicked out. And that's graphic, but it's real. And so if you're stuck there, take a moment, take an hour, take a day, whatever you can steal, and write down what you want to do when you grow up, and forget about the money. Just please forget about the money.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate. I worked 30 years, and it's going to be 2 years coming up in March that I've been doing the podcast, and I met so many great people. In 2017, we're going to monetize. So it's been 2 years that I've got zip, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and I'm good with that. But after going to ATA, my business has just cranked up. The phone rings. I just had Dan Johnson from Nine Figures Chronicle, also the co-host of Mark Kenyon's Wired to Hunt. He was just on the show, and it does get easier, but you have to pay the price. And so what kind of prices have you paid, Alex, to get where you are today?
I mean, for me right now, it's like you had said, I mean, I'm not making $1 with Whitetail DNA. I mean, and I'm glad I started with what I did, because I think about, like, my mom always tells me, she's like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And she's, like 50. So, you know what I mean? And so I think the fact that I recognize it at a younger age is nice. But, I mean, it's not easy, because especially with me being in school, and then I work 2 jobs while I'm in school, and then I'm trying to find any hour of the day to write when I can, or to edit videos from this past fall from hunting. So, I mean, time is something right now. I mean, I do not have a lot of it, because, I mean, with this being my last semester of school, that's really busy, gearing up for graduation. And then, like I said, with work, I mean, it's most nights, any articles that you see coming from me probably were put together the previous night around midnight, 1 a.m. while I had time. That's one thing I've noticed since starting this. I mean, sleep became less and less, but I'm okay with that. But if I can start, the more I can get done now and reap the benefits later, that's what will ultimately, make it worth it.
Thanks for that. And how do people get a hold of you?
You can, visit whitetaildna.com, and I have a contact section there. You can email me at alex@whitetaildna.com, or then I also have a Facebook page, Instagram. It's all there for Whitetail DNA.
So they're all the same on your social media channels?
Yep, it's all at Whitetail DNA, except for Instagram is actually at Whitetail_DNA.
Okay, it's Whitetail_DNA?
Yep.
Is that correct for Instagram?
Yep, for Instagram. And then Facebook and Twitter is just Whitetail DNA.
Thanks for that, Alex. And listeners, I want to give a shout out to Whitetail Stalker. They're our social media partner. And about the sound quality, this show is real people in real places. So sometimes the quality isn't exactly what you want, what you expect. But just remember, this show is about real people in real places. Now let's talk about bow hunting and why you are so passionate about it.
It's a funny thing the way I got started into bow hunting, because I deer hunted as a kid with my dad. He was kind of like not really a huge deer hunter, but just more of a general all-around outdoorsman. So I'd go deer hunting with him, and it was fun and everything. We normally didn't see much. And then I want to say, I'm pretty sure it was Fred Eichler. I was watching Fred Eichler hunt on one of Eastman's shows back when I was like 14. Remember, he shot like a little 6-pointer, and he was just so pumped, and he was freaking out, and I thought that was so cool. And so I ended up buying a bow, and the first deer I ever shot was actually with a bow. I shot just a little doe, and I was actually in a ground blind. She came in to this little food plot that I had to like 7 yards. I shot her, and I watched her go down. And from that moment on, it's just like I never stopped. That year, I shot a really nice buck with my gun. And then from there on, that was 2010, I haven't shot another deer years. I haven't rifle hunted since then, and it's just been all bow. So it's been pretty cool.
That's exciting. Now, you mentioned your first deer. Let's unpack that a little bit. How you got there, your shot, and, the emotion that you felt when you finally put that deer on the ground.
Yeah, so that was a super cool experience because where I was hunting it was an urban setting. It was behind this guy's house, and this guy actually was a really big deer hunter. He didn't hunt behind his house, so he hunted like Buffalo County, Wisconsin. But he was super nice, and he planted a food plot for me, and it's pretty much just behind his backyard. And he was kind of a little bit of a mentor for me, and it was, he was running a trail camera and showing me how to use them, and so he put in a ground blind for me and everything. And so when I went and hunted out there, I think it was one of the very first times I ever went bow hunting. So I was pretty lucky on that, and had this doe come through. It was the first deer I've ever seen while bow hunting in my life, and she came to at about 7 or 8 yards. I mean, it was close quarters, and to this day, I don't even know how I got drawn back because she was staring right at me. And got drawn back. I put the pin on her and let the arrow fly, and I just remember I was jumping around on the ground blind. I didn't know I was losing my mind. And she ran basically like right into the tree line, about 20 yards outside the food plot, and tipped over. And then I had some friends come out, and then my dad, and we gutted the deer, and it's the first time I ever got a deer. And from then on, man, it's been a passion just burning inside of me.
So if you're going to give 3 or 5 tips, secrets to new bow hunters, what would they be?
First one would be don't get discouraged, because for me, that was one of the first times I ever went bow hunting, but that's not usually how it works. First tip would be to not get discouraged. It might not go your way right away. Second tip would be to learn as much as you can, because what really helped me was I read nonstop. I'd take in school, in class, I'd always be typing in, into Google, bow hunting whitetails or deer hunting or anything along those lines, and I would read as much as I could. So the more information you can pick up, right away, the better off you'll be. Excuse me. And then another tip I'd give for a new hunter or a new bow hunter would be to shoot your bow a lot. When I was younger, I would go outside into my yard and shoot every day. When I was like 16, I saved up like $250. I bought a Glendale full rut target, and I would go out into my yard and shoot for hours upon hours upon hours. And I think it's really, you don't have to go to that extreme, but is what I do think new bow hunters should do is be really comfortable with their equipment, because it's not like rifle hunting where, you would put the crosshairs on the deer, shoot, and they go down a lot of the time. With bow hunting, you got to be a lot more accurate. You got to know what you're doing as far as blood trailing, because you got to know where you hit the deer. Do you hit it in the liver? Do you give it 6 to 12 hours? Did you double lunger or him? So those would be kind of the first few tips I would give to any new bow hunter.
Thanks for that. And in the warm-up, you talked about DIY on public or private land. So let's talk about that for a few minutes, and then we'll give some shout-outs and wrap the show.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, so as far as public land and DIY, I do a lot. I do about 80% of my hunting on public land, probably. And I really love the challenge with that. It's pretty gratifying if you hike back a mile on public property and, shoot a nice buck that, anybody could have done that. Anybody could have done it, but you outworked, pretty much everyone else. So that's a lot of fun for me, spending lots of times. I spend a lot of time in the spring scouting, and then I feel like every year I'm always getting new properties, whether that be door knocking or public land. I'm kind of constantly, I guess I kind of think of it as adding to my arsenal, because a public land spot that was really good last year might not be good next year due to hunter pressure, things of that. So I think that's a big player for me. And it's just an added challenge. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks for that. And when you write, how do you get the inspiration, and just talk about writing in general for the outdoor audience?
Yeah, writing. when I think of a topic, I like to think of timely topics, things that are going on right now, but to get the inspiration for any article is just, I'd like to write something that I would want to read, because there's so much information out there. It's hard to pick a topic that hasn't ever been written about, but it's putting your spin on it, your 2 cents. Because I can write an article about 3 things to ask yourself before you start shed hunting, and you could turn around and write the same article tomorrow, but it would be different, if that makes sense. And so you got to kind of have that knowledge that, you get to bring value to it. And so I try to think of ways that I can bring value, because in the grand scheme of things, anyone that is reading anything that I write, I want them to take value out of it and learn from it, because ultimately that's what I did. And I learned from a lot of these, reading online stuff. And so that's kind of how I get my inspiration when I write.
And thanks for that. We're at the point in the show that you get a chance to give some shout outs. So take 90 seconds, 120 seconds and give some shout outs to the people who help you along the way, magazines you're writing for, and anybody else you want to say hi to.
Yeah, well, I'd like to first give thank Kurt Wells and Gordon Whittington, who are the editors of Bow Hunter magazine and North American Whitetail, for giving me a chance to write for them, because getting into those 2 publications was pretty special for me, and reading them growing up was pretty cool then to see my face in that. And then just everyone who's mentored me for hunting along the way. I've got a couple buddies, Drew Freeland and Brian Rusk. They're the ones who really pushed me to my writing career and kind of helped me to shape me into who I am today. And then my dad, who just, if it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't be a hunter in general. And that's what if I wasn't a hunter, I wouldn't have became the deer hunter that I am now.
Well, Alex, I just want to thank you on behalf of thousands of listeners throughout North America. I can't wait to just watch how your career grows over the next decade or 2. And I just appreciate you taking your time today from your college studies to share on Whitetail Rendezvous.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Bruce. Thank you again for having me on.
The next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous is going to be real special. We're going to change it up. Mike Granstad from Whitetail Stalker is going to interview yours truly, the host of Whitetail Rendezvous, Bruce Hutchin. There's a lot of twists and turns and a lot of background information about Whitetail Rendezvous going to come out on the show. So stay tuned. Hope you listen and subscribe, rate, and review if you think I did a good job.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.